When you see a smoker, you think what they're doing is pointless and disgusting. But when you see porn, you don't see it as entirely gross or pointless. You see there being some kind of pleasure in it, even though it's a little bit gross. Smoking, you see it as gross, pointless, and not pleasurable. When you take a drag of your first cigarette, it's disgusting. You know it's fucking not pleasurable. But when you see porn, you know it's kind of gross, but it feels so good. It's kind of pointless, but there's definitely some good in it. And it's so pleasurable. It's like the number one pleasurable thing on earth. It's just this nuke of pleasure. The only reason why you can't see it this way is because you're a PMO user. When you're a smoker, the smoker actually believes that there's pleasure in smoking the cigarettes. The reason why this is the case is because they are a smoker. You can only get pleasure from the substance if you are an addict of that substance. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why? Why is that the case? Surely if it's pleasurable for the addict, then it should be pleasurable for someone who's not an addict. It's the same substance after all. Here's the thing. When you first use PMO, right, or when you first smoke a cigarette, that creates the need, the craving for the next one, right? Because it's an addictive substance. This is what addictive substances do. They create craving. Now, the pleasure that the PMO user or the cigarette user has is the relieving of that craving. That's the only pleasure they experience. And you can test this for yourself because when you smoke a cigarette for the first time, you find it repulsive. When you use PMO for the first time, you find it repulsive. Now, when you use PMO for the first time, you might feel like there's a bit of curiosity or there's a bit of novel factor or there's a bit of like shock, but there's no actual pleasure in the first time you use PMO. There only is pleasure in when you use PMO in the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time you use PMO, because by that point you've created the craving. And because you've created the craving, there's now pleasure when you relieve that craving. But of course, all of this is illogical because you're no better off when you're a PMO user than you were at the start, because the pleasure is just like banging your head against the wall in order for it to be pleasurable upon stopping. You could instead just choose not to bang your head and therefore have that same pleasure that you would have gotten if you were to stop banging your head against the wall all the time, because you're no longer banging your head against the wall. I hope that makes a lot of sense. Let me explain things even further using a graph. We'll compare how a porn user views porn versus a genuine pleasure, such as kissing a girl on the lips, or eating, or running around playing frisbee, looking at a sunset, hanging out with your friends, an actual pleasure in life, doing sport, something like that. So this is the graph that I've made when you're hanging out with your friends. You've got pleasure on this axis, time on this axis. You have an up where you're having loads of pleasure, and then it gradually goes down when you stop, right? This is how pleasure should be. This is how real pleasure is. You have pleasure, and then it wanes off, but you don't feel any worse off at the start. As you can see, this is you at the start, this is you when it finishes. You're no worse off. Now, porn, from the user's perspective, looks exactly the same, because this is what it looks like from their perspective. This isn't what it's actually like, right? Pleasure here, time here, exact same. But here's the reality of what's going on. The reality of what's going on in the porn user's head is so. The pleasure is here, the time is here. The pleasure goes down when you use porn because it's fucking disgusting and it creates craving. This is the creation of craving, right? You create craving when you use porn. And then when you use it the next time, right, that craving gets relieved partially, a little bit. Boop. And that, right, this little increase, the porn user experiences as pleasure, which is why we say it feels good when you use porn, even though it's fucking disgusting and even though you actually don't get any real pleasure from it, right? Now, it goes the exact same and it gets worse and worse over the time as you get more desensitized. And this is probably where you are, or where, you know, the heavy user is. And as you can see, your life is just a living hell when you're not using porn. Or even when you are using porn. Your life is fucking shit either way. Which is why being an addict fucking sucks. I experienced this for 7 years of my life and it was horrible. As I said, this graph is true for smoking and porn. They're the same. When you smoke a cigarette, it creates craving and you just partially relieve that craving. The only reason why any smoker smokes is because they can't fucking stop. They were under this delusion, and at a certain point when they tried to quit, they realised they can't. It's the same thing with the PMO user, right? Pleasure is the delusion, right? It's complete delusion. And at a certain point, even you start realising, fuck, I'm not even enjoying this when I am using porn, but you can't stop. What kind of pleasure is it that when you weren't using it, you crave it, right? When you are using it, you don't even enjoy it. If you eat, right, eating is a real pleasure. And when you're not eating, you feel hungry. But when you eat, you actually satisfy that hunger and it feels good. no matter what. Whereas with PMO, at a certain point, you're using PMO, it doesn't even feel fucking good anymore. That's how you know it's an addiction. That's how you know this is what's really going on. And when you quit porn, believe me, you no longer have to stop banging your head against the wall, and it feels so much better. As I said, it's like banging your head against a brick wall to make it pleasurable upon stopping. Just stop hurting yourself. There's nothing to give up when you use porn, when you stop using porn, right? It's just complete bliss. It's a peaceful life. It's a real life. It's like not living your life in fucking second gear all the time. You can live your life full pace, full everything. So using PMO or smoking cigarettes, they're the exact same thing, right? If you're a PMO user and you look at cigarette smokers and you're like, what the fuck are they doing? You're in the same position as them, the exact same position as them. Non-PMO users look at PMO users like how PMO users who don't smoke look at smokers. Do you see what I'm getting at? They're the exact same trap. The only reason why you can't see it that way is precisely because you're banging your head against the wall and therefore you want to stop. So you just use porn and it temporarily stops it, but then you go right back to banging your head. The way that you can stop banging your head permanently is by stopping using pornography, using the easy peasy method to quit porn. If you're struggling with the easy peasy method, which I know a couple of you are, recommend rereading it and really just undo a lot of that brainwashing. This is how you get free. Undo the brainwashing using the easy peasy method. It's free, it's fantastic, it's the best way to quit porn. I struggled for 7 years just using brute willpower and it never worked. Use the easy peasy method. Trust me, you're going to find a way. And even the people that are messaging me and they're saying, oh, I'm struggling with easy peasy, even they are like convinced that easy peasy is the GOAT. Even they're convinced, oh, the willpower method's bullshit. They're just struggling with the method. And the reason why they know it's the best method despite having some problems with it is because they have gone through a period of time with no urges and with no need to go back to it. And they're feeling that feeling of elation. Trust me, if you stick at it and you actually undo all of that brainwashing, you can get to a stage where you're totally fucking free and it feels amazing. And now I can live my life. I can actually live my life without kind of focusing on porn addiction as the main focus. I have other things to do now. And yeah, there are other problems in life, right? There are other issues. But at least I don't have this massive problem. You know, I've got time to focus on other problems in my life, which are problems that are actually worth solving with willpower or otherwise. Instead of porn addiction, which porn addiction is like lugging along a giant metal ball. Stop it. Help yourself. Read easy peasy. It's fucking amazing.